InterStellar KSP tutorial. Today we're going to be discussing antimatter, and as such it's going to be, of course, as usual, another basic tutorial. So you have a few things in regards to antimatter that you should know. First off, you're going to need to be able to collect it. In that sense, you're going to need to use the dual technic magnometer, or technique, whatever the hell you pronounce that thing, magnometer. And when you activate this thing, you'll see that it'll give you a flux number. When you're in the actual atmosphere, it'll be 0, but once you go outside and into space, the actual flux number will go higher. Now, the higher the flux, the more amount of antimatter you can collect. But I will, of course, explain and show you all the other stuff in terms of how to get that done. So that is one of the instruments. Another one is you can use a science lab to produce antimatter. Now, the science lab, of course, requires quite a bit of power. I think 5 megawatts of power to be able, 5 gigawatts of power, sorry, to be able to produce that, to be able to produce the antimatter. And now, in terms of being able to detect where the antimatter is, the science lab, you don't really care. You can create antimatter wherever you are. It doesn't increase or decrease as long as you have the power. And then in terms of, I would say the old-fashioned way, but it really isn't, it is new tech. In terms of using the flux instrument to collect it in space or in different solar systems, is that you have the detector to find where the flux is, and then you have the antimatter collector to be able to collect that antimatter. Now, of course, the higher the flux is, if you start collecting it with a higher flux, you'll get more antimatter. Now, over the wiki, it says that in Kerbal, and I even tested it, you get around a little bit below 4 units of antimatter in Kerbal orbit if you get to the highest flux. In regards to Joule, I think Joule is ridiculous. The flux is so high. You get around 370 units of antimatter, single units of antimatter, in terms of using the collector in Joule with the collect antimatter. So that is pretty much it. Also, of course, you need the antimatter containers. Let me just take a look at that. You do need the special containers to hold the antimatter. And now the antimatter containers need continuous power to be able to hold the antimatter inside them. I don't know why the hell I can't seem to find them now. I thought they were here. Where the hell are they? You have, of course, the antimatter reactor, so that when you collect the antimatter, the reactor produces the most amount of energy with it. And then you have the containers. I don't know where the hell the containers are. I thought they were here. I'm sure that they're, just for some reason I can't see them. Where is that? Where is that? Where is that? Here they are. They're in the propulsion section. So you have the antimatter container device. So in terms of your ship, you're going to need, of course, in case if you're not going the science lab route, you're going to need your antimatter scanner, flux scanner, to see where the highest flux is. You're going to need the collector. And then, of course, you're going to need the container to be able to contain the antimatter that's with this thing. So keep that in mind. Make sure that you have enough energy to keep enough power for the antimatter container. The antimatter container requires a certain amount of energy to be able to hold the antimatter inside. If you can't sustain the power on the container to hold the antimatter inside, it's very volatile. So if you don't have the energy to hold it, it's going to blow up and cause all sorts of chaos. So make sure you have a small little nuclear reactor on board and a small little generator to be able to produce a little bit of power that the antimatter container needs to be able to hold the antimatter in place. That being said, I'm going to quickly jump off to my beautiful antimatter sort of collector ship that I have, and we shall cruise into a nice altitude where I will actually show you what you can do. So here we are. It is my antimatter ship, research, exploration, and collection ship. It has quite a lot of gadgets. I do have my actual magnometer on the backside to be able to detect the magnometer, and of course I have my plasma thruster with the receivers at every possible angle, because it is the most efficient way. Unless you're stationary, then of course you can use the robotics mod, where you have the actual crap, I forgot how the hell to call them again. It's the second time. When you have the actual not winches, whatever, axles, special rotating axles that you can move around and stuff. But unless someone figures out a mod how to make it automatically move the receiver to the most energy, I don't think that's gonna be there's any point in using that in terms of in space. It doesn't matter if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's fine. So I'm going to speed things up, so do enjoy the ride, as we are going to be going up into the wonders of space. And I'll talk to you soon once we get there. So here we are, finally back. What I've done now is I've made an orbit like this, just to show you exactly how the flux works. Now, you can right click the flux. Generally, the higher the number, the better. But it's a little bit complicated because it actually gives a dash or whatever the hell it is. Just this is in simple terms. So what you should know is when you right click your antimatter, it actually tells you how much it's making currently per day and depending on the flux. So what I've did is I made a huge orbit in this sort of I made this shape of an orbit, and when you right click you get 0.07 milligrams per day or whatever. It's probably not milligrams. This is how much you're making. The higher the better. Technically speaking, now you got to keep an eye on your distance. I'm at 72,000 meters. I started it off at the lowest at 72,000 meters. So if I right click my actual antimatter collector and I increase the time, as you noticed, I'm going much higher and I'm getting much more antimatter per day. Now, generally speaking, from experience, is that you will know, I know that it's just below 4 per day. So you see I'm at 600,000. I'm getting much more now per one. I'm doing much more. 77, 78, 79. There it is, 3.9. I think 2 is the maximum. So it's around at 820,000 meters. Actually 825. I'm doing a little bit more. 827. Will it go more? Yes. So 830. Let's mark it off. 837. Still going more. Nice. 840. 850 maybe? Will we get it to 850? Yes, 3.97. Will it even go to 4 actually? It's 3.97. 806, 3.98. Or no, will it start going down to 870? You gotta always look at both of them. 873, 3.98. 880, 3.98, 880, 880. Come on, that's it. Is that it? It'll start going down, of course. 880. 880 seems to be the number. I'm gonna rotate now to the other side because I'm gonna make a proper orbit this time, actually. Yeah. It's not going. We're already much more. So around 880,000 meters is the orbit that I need to get as much possible flux as possible. To get the highest flux, of course, to get the highest antimatter as possible. So 3.98. So of course, okay, now it's going down. You see, it's a little bit too high. So between 880,000 to 930,000 meters. I'm going to get the maximum amount of antimatter I'm going to get. So simple. The more I go, now it's going to be 0. So what I'm going to try to do is make an orbit at this distance. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I need 880,000. So what we're going to do is switch off RCS. We're going to crank it up all the way to the other side. Now we need it at 880,000 meters to 930, we said. So that's exactly what you're going to do. And then you have an orbit, which is nice. You got a very large cushion between 880 to 930 of space, so your orbit doesn't have to be exact to be able to get the most amount of antimatter. And that's per day. So And then, of course, I will make a comparison and I'll show you and explain to you that as well, so don't worry about it. It's actually pretty easy. It's just more complicated than it sounds. No, no, I actually need the energy. No, 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 no. Let's crank on the energy. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So we need 880,000 meters. Let's crank it up, otherwise we're going to be here forever. Shit, I'm slowing it down. That's the other way. I'm going to go to the other side. I don't know why the hell I went that side. Oh yeah, I was thinking I was reducing it. It's fine. We need to get the other one at 880 and then we reduce this one and we're good to go. Hold on. There we go. So 90, 100,000. It's a long way to go. 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, 700. I slow down. I cut the power just a little bit more. 870, 880, 881. That's fine. So switch that off. Switch this off. It's not the best system I have, but it's a good one. Disable receiver. Because we overheat. Is it going down? Yes, it's going down now. So we're going to keep it nice and cool. Now let's go to the other side. Let's rotate the ship because it's a little bit big. It's going to take a little bit more time. So I'm going to do it right before I hit the location where I want to start spinning around because I have enough time to link it up. So 880 to 930. So this has to go all the way down to 930, preferably 925. I don't want to get to that part. So then technically I have an orbit now exactly at the most the highest magnetic whatever thingy-majiggy that I'm getting the most amount of flux. Okay, speed it up. Slow it down. If I start from here slowing down, I'm going to lose this. It's going to go a little bit lower, and I don't want to go below 881. That's the problem. If you start braking from here to reduce this, this will go down as well, and I don't want to reduce it already because we know that 880 was exact in some way, and 930 was the top limit. So I want to get as close as possible to that before I start braking. Because I don't mind if I brake a little bit after. It means then this will be maybe 883 or something because I'm going to brake. It's going to take some time. But it's better braking in front than braking behind. I hope that made sense. It's just a small little strategy in terms of doing that. Yeah, so here we go. I've got to switch on the power. Power's on. Okay, is it going down? No, I'm actually increasing it. I'm at the wrong way. Again, the same mistake. Instead of increasing the, instead of decreasing the apo-axis, I'm increasing it. It's fine. I'll just rotate. This is going up, of course. The heat is going up. The heat is going up. The roof is on fire. Okay, here we go. Nearly there. Of course, if we switch on the engine, it gives us a little bit more control, so that's nice. No, down it goes from 3 million. From 3 million to 2 million. Come on. So long. There's a lot of stuff left. 2 million. We need, this can't go, it was 930. I'm going to do 925 just to have that sort of buffer in between, so. Down we go. You see now I'm a little bit higher. Technically speaking, I'm not at 881. I'm of course more. So that's fine. Probably much more. I'm probably at, yeah, it's 890 now. I can increase that. It's actually decreasing. It's fine. I can increase that a bit. 100,000, 1 million. Come on. Ah, we're going to go slower now. We need 920. 25 we said. 930 was the mark. 925, and this is 925, and this is 870. So, as you see, this actually went a little bit lower. So now technically we have the best flux here, and now I gotta just increase this side. So again, I gotta go to the other side. Come on. Decrease that. Let's get it right this time, shall we? We're not gonna go to that side so we don't increase it. I'm gonna try to get it on point. I'm gonna quickly rotate to the other side. Shit, we're gonna overheat, so we gotta better do this quick. We need to increase this by just a bit. We need to get it over 880, so it's not such a big increase. So come on, come on, come on. We'll be fine. We won't overheat, but it's pretty close because I speeded that up without retracting. It's not the best design chip, but yeah, it does the job. It has enough capacity to hold a lot of heat, so it's fine. No, actually here I needed to increase. I don't want to braking. Wonderful. So I did the opposite mistake this time. A complete screw up of example, but whatever. Because that would be slowing it down. That means that would be reducing it. I don't need to increase it this time. And I was used to reducing it the whole time. So again, I picked the wrong side. When you need shit to work, it just never happens. Okay, here we go. Cranking on our engines. What's up? Why our engines are not on? Our engines are on 898, a little bit more, and 925, 898. We needed above 880, so we got 880, 800 and literally nearly 900,000, and 929, just on the border. So technically now speaking, I should get the perfect amount of flux all the time. The whole orbit way, the whole way around the orbit, I should get 3.98, theoretically speaking. So let's just deactivate my receiver. Make sure these are off, which they are. This should be going down drastically. And now, let's take a look at the flux. So I should be getting 3.98 per day the whole way around this. So just to prove that, we can take a look at where we are in reference to that and speed things up. 398 the whole way around. 398 the whole way around, you see? 3.98, not 398, 3.98 the whole way around the whole orbit. I'm getting the maximum amount of antimatter collected per each antimatter collector. So of course this is going up really nicely. So if we take a look at it now, shit, no wait, why is it showing me? Because I have a couple of collectors. So there we go. Antimatter is going up, and I'm collecting it. Again, these need a little bit of power as well, so make sure you have a little bit of power on board to be able to power these babies up. But other than that, it should be fine. It's really electric charges. Let's speed things up. And we are continually getting antimatter, 32, 33. And that's pretty much it. So you're getting around 3.98 mg per day from one of these little babies. So this is in terms of how to collect your antimatter using the antimatter collectors. And now let's move to our lab, our science lab, in case you want to actually collect antimatter from your science lab. So generally speaking, you have a science lab. Make sure that you, of course, man your science lab in the crew. And once you stick the correct amount of crew on the science lab, then it'll actually work. You need 5 gigawatts of power for the science, as I mentioned before. And now let's take a look at one of my research stations that I have actually launched into orbit that I'm using as well to collect science. So now I'm not sure, but I do presume this is right. The science lab, it doesn't really matter where it is, you're still going to be producing the same amount of antimatter per day. So this is one of my science labs that I have in space. Didn't calculate it properly. I didn't end up managing to be able to power all of them up. I had to shut down, I think, a couple of these. All of these are shut down, yeah, because I don't have enough power to power up. One side, I do believe, just didn't have enough power to crank it up. Hold on a second, I might be wrong, though. I know, because I'm still using my antimatter, I do believe. No, is my antimatter on? Yeah, deactivate the reactor. So my antimatter is on, deactivate the reactor. And I think this section here, this line here is just not powered on. But other than that, all of these units are powered on. I will have to send in a couple more reactors to power that on. So now let's get down to the interesting part. Remember the antimatter collector, it was making 3.98. Well, this baby makes 27.614 per day. So of course, the disadvantage with this, you need 5 megawatts or 5 gigawatts of power. So you need quite a lot of power to make these. But this literally means that you will continually get 27.6 per day, though, and that's pretty much it. So of course, if you want to divide it, back IM, you're gonna need around 9 antimatter collectors to be able to match the same amount of antimatter that the science lab is doing. So hold on a second. Now the main question is, why the hell would you be using the antimatter collectors if this is producing more power? Because again, this is a big hassle. You need a lot of energy. 5 gigawatts is quite a lot of power, and of course it's very heavy. So this, and let's say your nuclear reactors, look at my nuclear reactors tutorial if you don't know how to get electricity off that. So it's quite a big of a hassle. Now don't forget, this is just the flux. In regards to the antimatter, in regards to the actual antimatter, in regards to the antimatter that you're collecting from the flux belt, I know the science geeks that are it's completely wrong. Wherever the flux belt around every planet is different. So of course the flux belt around this planet, I call it flux belt. I'm sure it's not even called that, but whatever. Where the hell is my damn ship? God damn it! Don't tell me I. Yes, I did cancel the damn thing. That's just joyous. So the flux belt around every planet. Remember the one that I had? This is what, 700,000. Well, I had around. We said around 900,000. So the antimatter collector that I had before I canceled it was around 880,000 to 930,000 meters. The flux belt at this distance was the best for this planet. Now, for example, Joel has a massive amount of magnetic energy in that belt, whatever flux, magnetic belt, whatever the hell you want to call it. So, as I said, you get 3.98 or 4 per day with the antimatter collector here. But if you go to Joel, you get a ridiculous amount, like 370 per day for one. Yeah. So this is the advantage with that. Again, you got to hunt it down. It means technically you go to Joel. What you do is the same principle. You start off at a very low orbit and you make a very high. So you make your orbit like that again, like what I did. And then you go up and down and you see where's the most antimatter that you're collecting by right-clicking on the antimatter collector. And then once you find the maximum amount of antimatter you're collecting, you equalize that orbit to be on that exact height all the way around. So you get the most amount of antimatter. So yes, in terms of Kerbal, it is a sort of balance because I will need 9 antimatter collectors to be able to produce the same amount as one science lab. But at the end of the day, the science lab is a fixed thing. Technically speaking, I don't see any reason for what to use the science lab. If we can just go back and take a look at it more into detail. The antimatter collector, I do believe, is a little bit lighter. Generally, it is much lighter, but again, you got to hunt it down. So if we take a look at the, where is it? So you need the science lab. This weighs 2.5 tons. And don't forget, plus you need the reactors to produce the amount of energy, 5 gigawatts of reactors. And then plus you need the electric generators. So that's a lot of weight you're dragging around. You know. On the other hand, if you want the collectors, all you need is either if you want to send a small probe, you stick on the Joule Technic magnetometer. And if you couldn't be bothered to send the small probe, you don't even need the magnetometer because technically the antimatter collector itself also tells you the flux. So you don't even need that. You just take the antimatter collector, you right-click the antimatter collector, and it of course tells you the flux, and plus it tells you how much you're collecting at that location currently. Then you make that orbit and you run all the way around. So yeah, so of course this is much lighter. You only have, how much does this weigh? This weighs 4 tons. That was 4.5, don't forget. Then you got the reactor. We need around 5 gigawatts of power. So you're really going to be cranking up the weight quite a bit. You know, as you even see, this is producing how much? 2 megawatts. You need 5 megawatts. So yeah, you really don't have enough of power. You really don't. 5 gigawatts, actually 5,000 megawatts you need. So no, that's 500 megawatts. So if we go with the small one, total power, that's 22,000. That's overkill. So generally speaking, I don't even think you have anything that produces exactly the amount of power you need just for one to be the most efficient. For one station, you don't have. How much is this? How much is this producing? That's 5 megawatts. And that's 2 megawatts of power. And this is 3,000 megawatts. So So yeah, generally speaking, again, the combination in terms of the reactors plus the generators you need to make the electricity and plus the science lab is a hell of a lot heavier in terms of one of these. These weigh 4 tons, but that's pretty much it. You have one of these little babies, they collect all the antimatter for you, and you are done. I do hope I pretty much answered everything in terms of antimatter. Generally speaking, in terms of my opinion, I don't like antimatter at all. It's a huge hassle to collect it. It's a huge hassle to have enough of it, and it gets consumed very fast. Yeah, you get wonderful generators. You get a lot of great advantages with it, but it's just so time consuming to collect the damn thing and just such a headache to collect it and store it. And secondly, it just gets consumed so quick. That's why you have insane amounts of storages for the actual antimatter, the antimatter storage units. So you have maximum, here you see maximum power required. You need 100 kilowatts. It's very little amount of power to keep it stable. But in terms of the amount of storage, it doesn't even say how much it stores. I don't know why. It stores huge amounts of units. I don't know why it doesn't say it, how many units it can store. Whatever, it just stores ridiculous amounts of units, and you'll find out why, just because it consumes it so quick. So this is just my general opinion. It gives you huge advantages, but just generally speaking, I just prefer to stick with the fusion reactors and to stick to thermal jets and so on and so forth. That combination seems to be much more efficient and much more less of a headache. And I can just land anywhere. I can mine, especially with the refineries, which I'm going to cover. I can get all the fuel I need with a fraction of the time with much less of a headache. But again, it's a challenge. It's pretty cool. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as always, let me know what you think. Take care. Bye.